Today, I'm Richard Kaplan. I'm always Richard Kaplan. But today we are going to discuss the lunchbox series of modules. And lunchbox is a name that has come to be associated with a large variety of API and other manufacturers that run off of a plus and minus 15 volt and have this footprint size and edge connector that will fit into this box. It's a self-powered rack with the power supply being over here, but there's many different versions of the rack. This one happens to hold 8 modules. There's some that hold 4 modules. There's some that hold 2 modules. There's some that hold 10 modules. This one has a set of API equalizers, 3 different modules, and also 4 Angus 404 equalizers, which is my personal favorite equalizer of all time. But we're today going to be discussing the API equalizers primarily because they're available as a discrete analog unit, and they're also available as a plug-in on almost every digital recording software and plug-in option. So what we have is, starting on the left, the granddaddy of it all, the API 550, which is a 3-knob equalizer, and there's 3 concentric knobs, and that was the equalizer that many people associated and made the API name famous. Next, on the right, there are a pair of API 550A equalizers, which was the second generation in design from API, still very vintage. And then third is a API 554 equalizer, which was a later version, but still a very desirable equalizer. The API 550 is got concentric knobs. The inner knob controls the frequency that you're selecting, and the outer knob controls whether you're attenuating, if you move the knob to the left, or boosting the frequency that you have selected by the inner knob. Now, they all operate the same. The inner knob being the frequency selection, outer knob being the amount of boost or attenuate. The difference lies partly in the early version had 1 API amp module in it, and the API 550 had 2 of the API square amplifier modules in it, and many people thought, well, 2 is better. When in fact, the reason that they put in a second amp module was so that they could get the additional frequencies and the additional gain. It doesn't make it sound better. In fact, in some cases, I would say it actually adds a little bit of noise to the overall circuit. The API 550 has less frequencies than the API 550A. They both have at the bottom end 50, 100, and 200 cycles as your selectable frequency with the inner knob, but the API 550A gave you 2 additional frequencies of 300 and 400. The center knob, which controls the mid-range, is basically the exact same frequencies on both the 550 and the 550A. The high frequency knob, which is the top of the 3 concentric knobs, gave you considerably more choice on the high end with the 550A, starting at 5 kilohertz and going all the way up to 15 kilohertz, but with in-between choices of 7,000, 10,000, and 12.5 thousand hertz. The 550 only gave you one intermediate intermediate frequency of 10,000 or 10K. They both have knobs, the 550 and the 550A have knobs that allow you to have a peak or a shelving mode on the high and the low frequencies. The 554 gave you the choice of peak or shelf on all three frequencies, which is kind of a nice thing. The other thing that the 550 added, it looks like it has less controls, but in reality what it has is the inner knob, which controls the frequency, is sweepable, so you have every frequency available, not just the click-stopped frequencies that are selectable on the 550 and the 550A. So the 554 at the bottom end goes all the way down to 30 cycles instead of 50 cycles, and goes all the way up to 600 cycles with the sweep of the inner knob. The mid-range starts at 800 cycles and goes all the way up to 1.6K instead of the frequencies available to you on the 550 and the 550A. And the high frequency sweep knob gives you from 800 cycles all the way up to 16,000 cycles, higher than either the 550 or the 550A will give you. Now in actual usage, this is an equalizer that is great sounding on virtually everything because it's just a great circuit and very clean and very biting kind of peaking and shelving frequencies, and works very well. Many people find it very desirable for drums because with a 2-knob equalizer you can't really do what you can do with a 3-knob equalizer. One of the things I like doing with an API, and it can be any one of the three, is to find a very low frequency with the inner knob of the bottom end, put it to shelving so that it's controlling all the frequencies there, and then to put an extreme amount of boost on the bottom end, say of a kick drum, a snare drum, or a tom-tom, and to find the frequency where it sounds the best using your ears. And using your ears are the most valuable tool in any of this. Then with the high frequency, I would also find which frequency sounds the best with the inner knob as I sweep through, and usually I put a large amount of gain as I'm sweeping through and find the frequency that hits that particular drum sweet spot to make it sound the best, and then later back it down to the amount that's appropriate. But the important part is the middle frequency, the mid-range. On most drums, you don't want to have too much mid-range, especially kick and snare, or you'll eat up the whole mix and not have any room for the guitars and vocals. So what I would do is to take the attenuation knob all the way to the left, sweep the frequencies to find where that sweet spot on that particular drum is that knocks out the middle of the drum and leaves you the tonic note at the bottom and the actual hit of the beater or the stick against the drum on the top, and takes away those annoying ringing tones that are in between that block the guitars and vocals. And all three of these equalizers are equally good at doing this. The 554, which has been shunned by many engineers, is actually possibly the best at it because you can put a huge amount of boost on the bottom end and sweep the frequency and find where the real tone of the drum is and set it there and put it on a peaking sort of EQ with the switch, then find by giving a large amount of boost to the high frequency, and once again using your ears, sweep until you find the point at which the beater or the stick sounds the best against the drum, and then go to the middle and attenuate instead of boost a large amount, and once again using your ears, sweep the frequencies till you find that sweet spot where the middle of the drum, the annoying rings and oinks as I call them, are gone, but you still have the tonic note and the high frequency of the drum hitting. So that is equally valid for the actual analog plug-in unit in an API rack, or for a digital plug-in in a digital software setup. And this is one of the few equalizers that have become a standard in the industry. Now, I still prefer the Angus equalizer to any equalizer ever made, and we'll do another video later on showing how the Angus equalizer is so useful and valid. API came out with a equalizer to combat the marketplace that the Angus was taken in the 560 API, which is a thumb wheel type of equalizer, but I think the API with the Dean Jensen mods actually ended up sounding the best. It's a different principle of how they get the frequencies and how they boost and attenuate. With most equalizers, what's happening is as you sweep the frequencies or click on a particular frequency, you're using a filter to find that frequency, and then you're either, as you're boosting or attenuating, you are either taking that frequency and with the same filter boosting or attenuating that, which causes a phase shift, as all filters do. Inherent in the physics of a filter is a slight phase shift. The Angus equalizer does not suffer from that same problem because it's using a gyrator circuit to fix the frequencies at. So that is a short introductory course on how to use the API equalizers. My name is Richard Kaplan. Thank you very much.